Hey friends, welcome back to the Diplomacy and Discourse channel. I'm your host AR, and today's episode kicks off a two-part series that dives deep into the strategic shifts reshaping the global landscape. We're exploring a fascinating concept, smart power. You might have heard of hard power, think military force, and soft power, culture, influence, and diplomacy. But smart power? That's the hybrid, a calculated mix of both. It's how modern states project strength while building alliances, how they defend interests without firing bullets, and how they rise without dominating. So today, let's unravel how smart power plays out in a world that's constantly shifting. Let's begin with two foundational concepts: geopolitics and geoeconomics. These are not just academic terms. They're the lens through which leaders make life and death decisions. Geopolitics is the study of how geographical factors such as location, resources, and physical terrain influence a nation's political power and strategic decisions. It's the lens through which we can understand why countries act the way they do on the global stage. The United States enjoys a unique geographical advantage. Bound by the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, it has natural barriers that have historically protected it from foreign invasions. Its northern and southern neighbors, Canada and Mexico, have stable relations, allowing the U.S. to focus its military and economic efforts beyond its borders. This geographical setup has enabled the U.S. to become a global superpower, projecting influence worldwide while maintaining relative domestic security. Russia's vast expanses spanned 11 time zones, but its geography presents challenges. With few natural barriers to the west, Russia has faced numerous invasions throughout history. From Napoleon to Hitler, this vulnerability has instilled a strategic culture focused on creating buffer zones. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the involvement in eastern Ukraine are contemporary manifestations of this enduring geopolitical strategy, aiming to secure its periphery against perceived threats. Turkey's strategic location at the intersection of Europe and Asia has made it a pivotal player in regional and global politics. Controlling the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles Straits, Turkey holds the keys to naval passages between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. This control has significant implications, especially for countries like Russia, which rely on these waterways for maritime access. Additionally, Turkey's role in NATO and its relationships with neighboring regions underscore its importance as a bridge between East and West. Understanding geopolitics allows us to appreciate the underlying factors that drive national strategies and international relations. Geography doesn't determine destiny, but it certainly shapes the possibilities and constraints that nations navigate in the pursuit of power and security. Geoeconomics refers to the strategic use of economic instruments to achieve geopolitical objectives. Unlike traditional geopolitics, which relies on military might and alliances, geoeconomics leverages trade policies, investment strategies, sanctions, and technological dominance to influence international relations. China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, launched in 2013, exemplifies geoeconomic strategy. Through the BRI, China has invested in infrastructure projects across Asia, Africa, and Europe, including ports, railways, and digital networks. These investments aim to enhance global trade connectivity while extending China's economic and political influence. However, some BRI projects have led to significant debt burdens for recipient countries, raising concerns about the debt trap diplomacy and the potential for increased Chinese leverage over these nations. The United States employs geoeconomic tools such as sanctions and export controls to advance its foreign policy goals. By restricting access to its financial systems and critical technologies, the U.S. can exert pressure on countries like Iran, North Korea, and Russia. For example, sanctions targeting Chinese companies involved in purchasing Iranian oil aim to disrupt revenue streams that could fund activities contrary to U.S. interests. The use of geoeconomic strategies reflects a shift in how nations pursue power and influence. Economic tools offer a means to achieve strategic objectives without direct military confrontation. However, increasing reliance on such tools also raises questions about global economic stability, the potential for retaliatory measures, and the long-term effectiveness of economic coercion. Understanding geoeconomics provides insights into the subtle, yet powerful ways countries navigate the complex landscape of international relations. As economic interdependence grows, so does the significance of economic statecraft in shaping global order. Let's turn the clock back to 1945. The world was in ruins. Entire cities like Dresden, Hiroshima, and Stalingrad lay in rubble. Economies were decimated. Tens of millions were dead. The global order had collapsed, and the task of rebuilding it fell largely to the two remaining superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. But they had vastly different visions of what that rebuilt world should look like. The United States didn't just emerge victorious, it emerged ascendant. Its industrial base was untouched, its economy booming, and its technological and military advantages unparalleled. But America didn't just flex its muscles through tanks and troops. It flexed through architecture, not buildings though, but global systems. Out of this chaos came the Bretton Woods system, giving us institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. These weren't just financial instruments, they were geopolitical tools. The idea was simple but profound. If countries were economically tied to the US-led order, they'd be less likely to fall into chaos or communism. Trade, stability, and access to capital were used not just to rebuild Europe, but to bind it to American markets and, more importantly, American values. Then came the Marshall Plan in 1948, a stroke of strategic brilliance. The US poured over $12 billion, about $130 billion today, into the recovery of Western Europe. But it wasn't just about kindness or charity. This was geoeconomics in action. Rebuilding Europe created loyal allies, expanded markets for American goods, and pushed back against the rising tide of Soviet influence. It was smart power before the term even existed, the calculated blending of generosity and strategic interests. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union was crafting its own sphere of influence. Eastern Europe fell under Moscow's shadow, politically, economically, and ideologically. The USSR enforced its grip through military occupation, puppet regimes, and repression. But it, too, understood the value of persuasion. The Soviets invested in propaganda, educational exchanges, and support for anti-colonial movements around the world. From Angola to Vietnam, from Cuba to the Congo, the Soviet Union cast itself as the champion of the oppressed. It was the soft edge of a hard regime. From this Cold War standoff, the seeds of smart power were sown. Because in this battle of systems, capitalism versus communism, democracy versus authoritarianism, brute force wasn't enough. You had to win over minds. You had to shape narratives. You had to create alliances not just of interest, but of belief. That's why jazz musicians were sent abroad by the US State Department. That's why Moscow built universities for African and Asian students. It was a cultural arms race as much as it was a political one. And its legacy still haunts us today. Military-industrial complexes, intelligence alliances like Five Eyes, and shadow proxy wars from Korea and Vietnam to Nicaragua and Afghanistan, all of them were born out of this Cold War paradigm. A worldview where power meant more than just firepower. It meant systems, symbols, and solidarity. This was the crucible in which modern smart power was forged, and though the Cold War is over, its tools and tactics remain, reshaped for a world that's still divided, still competitive, and still in need of leaders who know how to wield both the sword and the story. The Cold War, a period of geopolitical tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union, has left an indelible mark on international relations. Despite the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, many of the strategic frameworks and institutions established during that era continue to shape U.S. foreign policy today. The United States maintains a vast network of over 750 military installations worldwide, extending security guarantees to more than 30 countries. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, originally formed to counter Soviet expansion, has expanded eastward, incorporating nations that were once part of the Eastern Bloc. This eastward expansion has been a point of contention for Russia, which perceives it as a threat to its sphere of influence. Russia's military interventions in Georgia, 2008, Crimea in 2014, and Ukraine in 2022 can be viewed through this lens, as efforts to reassert its influence in the face of perceived Western encroachment. However, the strategic landscape is evolving. Modern challenges such as cyber warfare, economic coercion, and information manipulation have emerged as significant threats. The concept of gray zone conflicts, activities that fall between traditional warfare and peaceful competition, has become increasingly relevant. These developments necessitate a reevaluation of traditional security paradigms and the adoption of more nuanced strategies that combine military, economic, and diplomatic tools. Since returning to office in January 2025, President Donald Trump has implemented significant changes to the U.S. foreign policy, reflecting a shift towards unilateralism and a focus on national interests. 1. Reassessment of international commitments. President Trump has withdrawn the United States from several international agreements and organizations, including the Paris Climate Agreement and the World Health Organization. These actions signify a move away from unilateral cooperation towards a more isolationist stance. Additionally, the administration has reduced funding for international aid programs, notably dismantling the U.S. Agency for International Development, which has led to significant impacts on global humanitarian efforts. 2. Approach to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The Trump administration has taken a distinct approach to the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. While expressing a desire for a swift resolution, President Trump has indicated a willingness to reduce U.S. involvement if progress is not achieved. This stance has raised concerns among European allies about the United States' commitment to NATO and the security of the region. 3. Relations with Iran. In a significant policy shift, the Trump administration has reinstated a maximum pressure campaign against Iran, demanding the complete elimination of its nuclear program. This approach marks a departure from previous negotiations that allowed for limited uranium enrichment for civilian purposes. The administration's hardline stance has increased tensions and complicated diplomatic efforts. 4. Trade policies and economic measures. President Trump has implemented a series of tariffs on imports from various countries, including traditional allies. These measures aimed at addressing trade imbalances have led to increased tensions and concerns about potential economic repercussions. Critics argue that such policies may undermine global economic stability and strain diplomatic relationships. And 5. Structural changes to the State Department. The administration has proposed a significant reorganization of the State Department, aiming to centralize foreign policy decision-making and reduce bureaucratic constraints. If enacted, these changes would represent one of the most substantial restructurings of the department since its inception. These developments under President Trump's second term reflects a broader shift in U.S. foreign policy, emphasizing national sovereignty and a transactional approach to international relations. As the global landscape continues to evolve, Understanding these changes is crucial for comprehending the future direction of U.S. engagement on the world stage. The United States benefits immensely from its geographical positioning. Flanked by the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, it enjoys natural barriers that have historically protected it from foreign invasions. Its only neighboring countries, Canada and Mexico, maintain stable and cooperative relationships, allowing the U.S. to focus its military and economic efforts globally without significant concerns about border conflicts. This secure positioning enables the U.S. to project power across the globe effectively. With a vast network of military bases and a formidable navy, the U.S. can respond to international crises rapidly and maintain a presence in key strategic regions. Furthermore, its diverse economy and innovative ecosystem support sustained global influence through both hard and soft power mechanisms. In contrast, China's geographical situation presents several challenges. Sharing borders with 14 countries including India, Russia, and North Korea, China operates in a complex and often tense regional environment. Territorial disputes in the South and East China Seas, as well as concerns over Taiwan, add layers of strategic complexity. Internally, China faces issues such as an aging population and economic transitions from manufacturing to a more service-oriented economy. Regions like Xinjiang and Tibet require significant resources to maintain stability, further stretching China's domestic focus. Given these constraints, China has adopted a strategy of smart power, emphasizing economic and cultural initiatives to extend its influence. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is a prime example, aiming to build infrastructure and foster economic ties across Asia, Africa, and Europe. However, the BRI has faced criticism for leading to debt burdens in participating countries, with some projects stalling or being scaled back due to financial and political concerns. Culturally, China has established Confucius Institutes worldwide to promote Chinese language and culture. While these institutions aim to enhance China's soft power, they have also faced scrutiny and closures in some countries over concerns about academic freedom and political influence. The United States' favorable geography provides it with unparalleled strategic advantages, enabling it to project power and influence with relative ease. China, while a rising global power, must navigate a more challenging geographical and political landscape, requiring a multifaceted approach to extend its influence. Understanding these geographical realities is crucial for comprehending the strategic decisions and global interactions of these two major powers. Originally coined by a Goldman Sachs economist to describe emerging markets, BRICS has transformed into a geopolitical bloc with tangible ambitions. Comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the group has evolved beyond its economic roots to challenge Western dominance in global affairs. In recent years, BRICS, BRICS, has expanded its membership to include countries seeking alternatives to Western-led institutions. Notably, in 2023 and 2024, the bloc extended initiatives to Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, Argentina, and United Arab Emirates. While Argentina later declined the invitation and Saudi Arabia has yet to formalize its membership, the expansion reflects a growing desire among nations to diversify their international alignments. BRICS has undertaken several initiatives to strengthen its collective influence. New Development Bank, NDB, established to finance infrastructure and sustainable development projects in member countries. The NDB aims to provide an alternative to traditional financial institutions. Contingent Reverse Arrangement, CRA. This framework offers financial support to members facing balance of payment pressures, enhancing economic stability within the bloc. De-dollarization efforts. BRICS countries are increasingly conducting trade in local currencies to reduce reliance on the US dollar, with mechanisms like currency swap lines and payment systems such as CIPS facilitating this transaction. Despite shared goals, BRICS faces internal challenges, particularly the long-standing rivalry between India and China. Border disputes and competition for regional influence have occasionally strained relations. However, the bloc has served as a platform for dialogue, with recent summits facilitating discussions aimed at de-escalating tensions. The expanse and initiatives of BRICS signify a shift toward a more multipolar world order. By providing alternatives to Western-dominated institutions, BRICS offers emerging economies a platform to assert their interests and influence global governance structures. In summary, BRICS has evolved from an economic acronym to a significant geopolitical condition, reflecting the aspirations of emerging economies to reshape the global order. While challenges persist, the bloc's continued growth and initiatives underscore its potential to influence international affairs in the years to come. Now let's talk about Iran, a country under siege, but not without options. Iran's strategic maneuvers from 2019 to 2025 illustrate a calculated effort to underscore Western pressures and assert its influence both regionally and globally. 2019 to 2020, navigating sanctions and pandemic challenges. Following the U.S. withdrawal from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, in 2018, Iran faced intensified economic sanctions that significantly impacted its economy. In response, Tehran sought to diversify its international partnership, notably strengthening ties with China and Russia. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 further strained Iran's economy. However, the crisis also reinforced its ideological stance, positioning itself as a leader of the anti-imperialist axis in the region. 2021 to 2022, military advancements and regional assertiveness. The election of President Ebrahim Raisi in 2021 marked a shift towards a more hardline approach. Nuclear negotiations stalled, and Iran advanced its missile and drone capabilities, enhancing its cyber warfare proficiency. In 2022, Iran increased naval patrols in the Strait of Hormuz, signaling its readiness to escalate tensions if provoked. 2023 to 2024, capitalizing on regional conflicts and BRICS membership. The October 7, 2023 attack by Hamas on Israel provided Iran an opportunity to expand its influence without direct involvement. Tehran offered rhetorical and logistical support to Hezbollah, strengthened ties with the Houthis in Yemen, and deepened cooperation with militias in Syria and Iraq. In 2024, Iran's admission into BRICS marked a diplomatic victory, granting it increased legitimacy and access to broader economic partnerships. This move aligns with Iran's strategy to seek alternatives to Western-dominated institutions and reduce reliance on the US dollar. 2025, strategic alliances and nuclear negotiations. In 2025, Iran continues to engage in strategic diplomacy, notably with China and Russia, to bolster its position in ongoing nuclear negotiations with the United States. Tehran resists proposal to transfer its enriched uranium stockpile to third countries, insisting on maintaining control under international supervision. Simultaneously, Iran has signed a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty with Russia encompassing trade, military cooperation, and intelligence sharing, further solidifying its alliance amid Western sanctions. Over the past 6 years, Iran has demonstrated resilience and adaptability in the face of external pressures. By forging strategic alliances, advancing its military capabilities, and seeking integration into alternative international frameworks like BRICS, Iran aims to outlast its rivals and reshape the regional order to its advantage. Now let's divert our attention to Saudi Arabia, the strategic hedger. 2019 to 2020, navigating turbulence and initiating transformation. In 2019, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS, faced significant international scrutiny following the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Despite the backlash, MBS accelerated the implementation of Vision 2030, an ambitious plan to diversify the Saudi economy and reduce its dependence on oil revenues. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 posed challenges, slowing economic progress. However, the crisis also underscored the urgency of economic diversification, reinforcing the kingdom's commitment to transformative reforms. 2021 to 2022, deepening global partnerships and technological advancements. During this period, Saudi Arabia strengthened its ties with China, expanding cooperation beyond trade to include surveillance technology, artificial intelligence, and 5G infrastructure. These collaborations signaled Riyadh's intent to embrace technological innovation and diversify its international partnerships. Simultaneously, the kingdom explored the possibility of normalizing relations with Israel, hosting U.S. delegations and discussing regional defense initiatives. However, the complexities of regional politics necessitated a cautious approach. 2023 to 2024, recalibrating regional relations and embracing multipolarity. The events of October 7, 2023, when Hamas attacked Israel, prompted Saudi Arabia to reassess its regional strategies. Recognizing the sentiments of the Arab populace, Riyadh paused normalization talks with Israel and shifted focus towards fostering regional unity. In a significant diplomatic move, Saudi Arabia restored ties with Iran in 2024 through a deal brokered by China, marking a pivotal step toward regional reconciliation. Additionally, the kingdom expressed interests in joining BRICS, reflecting its inclination toward a multipolar global order. 2025, advancing Vision 2030 and expanding global influence. In 2025, Saudi Arabia continues to make strides in diversifying its economy and enhancing its global presence. Investments in Africa. The kingdom has pledged to invest $41 billion in sub-Saharan Africa over the next decade, focusing on infrastructure, renewable energy, and startup ecosystems. Energy sector diversifications. Saudi Aramco has entered into a joint development agreement with China's BYD to advance new energy vehicle technologies, aligning with the kingdom's transition towards cleaner energy solutions. Aviation and tourism. The launch of Riyadh Air, a new national airline, aims to boost tourism by connecting the kingdom to 100 destinations within 5 years, showcasing modern luxury and aligning with Vision 2030 objectives. And cultural diplomacy. Saudi Arabia is investing in global cultural exchanges, hosting international events, and promoting its cultural heritage to enhance its soft power and global image. Saudi Arabia's journey from 2019 to 2025 illustrates a strategic recalibration in response to regional and global challenges. By embracing economic diversification, fostering new international partnerships, and investing in cultural diplomacy, the kingdom positions itself as a dynamic player on the world stage. This multifaceted approach underscores Saudi Arabia's commitment to shaping a resilient and influential future amidst an evolving geopolitical landscape. So why do Iran and Saudi Arabia matter so much? Because they illustrate the new rules of the game. It's no longer about who has the biggest army. It's about who can build alliances, shape narratives, and weather the storms. Iran, the defiant revolutionary, is betting on endurance and asymmetric power. Saudi Arabia, the calculating reformer, is betting on diversification and leadership. Both are operating in a world where smart power isn't a luxury, it's survival. Thank you for taking the time to listen to part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. Once again, thank you so much. I appreciate you all. Until next time.